The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered onto the concrete garage floor at exactly 11:47 p.m., when I heard my wife Kelly say the words that would change everything. "I'm tired of your feelings, Tony. You're too emotional to be a man." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I froze under the hood of my beat-up Ford pickup, motor oil dripping onto my work boots like black tears. Through the thin garage wall, her voice carried that fake sweetness she used when talking to people she thought mattered. Not me, obviously. Never me. "Eliot understands what I need," she continued, and I could practically hear her twirling her hair like some teenage girl. "He makes me feel alive again. Beautiful. Desired." Eliot, the photographer, the Instagram-famous pretty boy who'd been helping with her freelance styling business for the past 6 months. I'd met him twice. Once at a backyard barbecue where he'd worn my favorite flannel shirt like it belonged to him, and once at our kitchen table where he'd eaten my leftover pizza while explaining why traditional masculinity was toxic and outdated. I stayed perfectly still under that hood, breathing in the familiar smell of motor oil and metal, while my wife of 18 years giggled like a schoolgirl on the phone with another man. The garage suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in like a coffin. Tony's always moping around, complaining about work, wanting to talk about his feelings. Kelly's voice drifted through the wall. "It's exhausting. A real man doesn't need constant emotional validation." My hands started shaking. Not from anger, not yet. From something colder, something that felt like the first crack in a dam that had been holding back a flood for years. I wiped my hands on an old rag and walked to the window that looked into our kitchen. There she was, pacing around the island in her silk pajamas, the expensive ones I'd bought her for our anniversary 3 months ago. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled even at midnight, because God forbid Kelly Monroe Ward ever look less than Instagram ready. "He wants us to move to Vermont," she said, laughing. "Can you imagine? Me stuck in some cabin in the woods with Mr. Sensitivity? I'd rather die." Vermont, my dream job offer, the remote position with the tech startup that would let us escape this dying New England town, buy some land, maybe fix our marriage. I'd been excited to tell her about it for weeks. "No, baby, I'm not going anywhere," Kelly cooed into the phone, especially not with him. I watched her for another minute, memorizing the way she looked when she thought no one was watching, when she thought she was safe, when she thought she was winning. Then I walked back to my truck, picked up the wrench, and got back to work. But something fundamental had shifted in my chest, something that felt like a door slamming shut and a window opening at the same time. The next morning, I made coffee for 2 like always. Kelly stumbled into the kitchen at 9 a.m., hair wrapped in a towel, checking her phone before she even said good morning. "Sleep well?" I asked, handing her the mug with the little heart on it that said, "World's Best Wife." She barely looked up. "Fine. You were banging around in the garage pretty late." "Just fixing the transmission. You know how it is." She scrolled through Instagram, double-tapping photos of other people's perfect lives. "Oh, I'm meeting Eliot today to plan the Henderson wedding shoot. Might be late." "No problem." I sipped my coffee and watched her. Really watched her. The way she held her phone like it was more precious than anything in the real world. The way she'd put on makeup before coming downstairs even though we were alone. The way she couldn't quite meet my eyes. "You're staring," she said, finally glancing up. "Just thinking." "About what?" "How beautiful you look in the morning." For a split second, something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe. Or surprise that I'd said something nice, but it was gone before I could be sure. "That's sweet, honey." She patted my hand like I was a dog who'd done a trick. "But you know I look terrible without my face on." She didn't. Even after 18 years, even after everything, Kelly was still the prettiest woman I'd ever seen. High cheekbones, green eyes, the kind of smile that made strangers stop and stare. That was part of the problem. She'd never had to develop a personality because her looks opened every door. "Dad, can you drive me to school?" Our daughter Liv appeared in the doorway, 16 years old, and already a carbon copy of her mother. Same blonde hair, same green eyes, same expression of mild disgust when she looked at me. "What's wrong with your car?" "Nothing. I just don't want to be seen in that piece of crap Honda you bought me." Kelly laughed. "Liv, be nice to your father." But she was smiling when she said it, like Liv's insult was funny instead of cruel. "I'll drive you," I said, "but we're taking my truck." Liv rolled her eyes. "God, Dad, do you have to be so embarrassing?" I looked at my daughter, this person Kelly and I had created together, who now treated me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. When had that happened? When had I become the family joke? "Actually," I said, standing up and grabbing my keys, "walk. It's good exercise." "Dad!" But I was already heading for the garage. Behind me, I heard Kelly sigh dramatically. "Your father's having one of his moods," she told Liv. "Just ignore him. He'll get over it." I paused at the door, my hand on the knob. One of my moods, like having feelings about being disrespected in my own home, was some kind of character flaw. "Hey, Kelly," I called back. "That job offer in Vermont? I'm taking it." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the coffee maker gurgling in the corner. "What job offer?" Kelly's voice had gone sharp. "The one I've been trying to tell you about for 3 weeks. Remote position, great pay, chance to start over." "Tony, we can't just—" "I can. I am." I turned around and looked at both of them. "I start Monday." Kelly's face had gone pale under her makeup. "We need to discuss this." "No," I said, and something in my voice made Liv look up from her phone for the first time all morning. "We really don't." I walked out to my truck, fired up the engine, and backed out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, I could see Kelly standing in the kitchen window, her phone already pressed to her ear. Probably calling Eliot. Probably telling him about her husband's latest emotional outburst. I drove to the old boxing gym on the other side of town, where my best friend Cal was already working the heavy bag. Cal Murphy, ex-cop turned trainer, the only person in this town who still treated me like a man instead of a walking disappointment. "You look like hell," he said when I walked in. "Feel worse." I wrapped my hands and started hitting the bag. Left jab, right cross, left hook. The familiar rhythm felt good, felt real, felt like the only honest thing I'd done in months. "Kelly?" Cal asked. "Kelly." "Finally caught her?" I stopped punching and looked at him. Cal had been warning me for years, dropping hints about Kelly's friends, about the way she acted when I wasn't around. I'd always defended her, always made excuses. "Last night?" I said. "Phone call with the photographer." Cal nodded like he'd been expecting this conversation for a long time. "What are you going to do?" I started hitting the bag again, harder this time. "I don't know yet." "Want some advice?" "Shoot." "Don't get mad," Cal said, holding the bag steady while I pounded it. "Get gone." "What do you mean?" "I mean you're a good man, Tony Ward. You deserve better than this. But if you're going to leave, do it smart. Don't give her ammunition to use against you." I stopped punching and wiped sweat from my face. "I took the Vermont job." "Good. When do you start?" "Monday." Cal grinned. "Remote?" "Yeah." "Even better. You can work from anywhere." He leaned against the bag. "How long before you have to move?" "Contract says I have 6 months to relocate. Plenty of time to get your ducks in a row." I knew what he meant. Bank accounts. Asset protection. Making sure Kelly couldn't clean me out while I was figuring out my next move. "She doesn't know yet," I said. "About the affair, I mean. Doesn't know I know." "Keep it that way for now. Let her think she's getting away with it." "Why?" Cal's smile was sharp as a knife. Because people get sloppy when they think they're winning, and Kelly's about to get very, very sloppy. I drove home an hour later feeling clearer than I had in months. The house was empty, Kelly's car was gone, probably at another business meeting with Eliot. Liv was at school, assuming she'd found another ride. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. The Vermont job offer was still in my inbox, waiting for my signature. Good salary, full remote work, health benefits. Everything I needed to start over. I signed the contract and hit send. Then I opened a new browser window and started researching divorce lawyers. The first rule of emotional warfare is simple. Stop feeding the enemy. I learned this over the next 2 weeks as I watched Kelly's confusion grow. She'd come home from her meetings with Eliot expecting the usual routine. Me asking where she'd been, her getting defensive, the fight that would end with me apologizing for being suspicious, and her feeling justified in whatever she was doing. Instead, I started saying things like, "How was your day, honey?" and "That's nice, dear," while never quite meeting her eyes. It was driving her crazy. "You're being weird," she said one Thursday night, standing in the doorway of my home office where I was working on my first Vermont project. Weird how? I don't know. Different, distant. I looked up from my laptop and gave her the kind of smile you'd give a stranger. Polite, empty. Just focused on work. This new job is keeping me busy. About that, she said, stepping into the room. Don't you think we should have discussed it before you accepted? Discussed what? Moving to Vermont, Tony, uprooting our whole life. I leaned back in my chair and studied her face. She was wearing the outfit she'd bought for client meetings, a tight black dress that showed off her figure, heels that added 3 inches to her height, makeup that took an hour to apply, all for a photographer who specialized in Instagram lifestyle shots. We don't have to move right away, I said. The position is remote. Relief flickered across her features. Oh, well, that's different then. I turned back to my laptop. Was there something else? She stood there for another moment, waiting for me to ask about her day, her outfit, her plans. When I didn't, she shifted uncomfortably. I'm going out with the girls tonight, Mara's birthday dinner. Mara Chen, her business partner, the one who actually did most of the work while Kelly posed for social media photos. Have fun, I said without looking up. You don't want to know where we're going? Not particularly. Another pause. I could feel her staring at me, trying to figure out what had changed. Finally, she left, her heels clicking angrily on the hardwood floor. I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway, then opened my phone and checked the location app we'd installed years ago for safety. Kelly was heading downtown, but not toward any restaurant. She was going to Eliot's studio. For Mara's birthday dinner? Right. I screenshotted the location and saved it to a folder I'd started keeping. Evidence. Just in case. The next morning, Kelly slept until noon. When she finally came downstairs, her makeup was smeared, and she was wearing the same dress from the night before. Fun night? I asked, making myself a sandwich for lunch. Yeah. We went to that new place on Harbor Street. You would have hated it. Harbor Street was on the opposite side of town from where she'd actually been. I nodded and took a bite of my sandwich. Sounds great. I'm glad you had fun with Mara. Something flickered in her eyes. Yeah, Mara. I finished my sandwich in silence while Kelly poured coffee and checked her phone. She kept glancing at me like she was waiting for something, an accusation maybe, or questions about her story. Instead, I rinsed my plate and headed for the door. Where are you going? She asked. Hardware store. Need some supplies for the garage. When will you be back? I shrugged. When I'm done. But I didn't go to the hardware store. I drove to the marina on the other side of town, where the old fishing boats sat rotting in their slips. It was quiet there, peaceful, a good place to think. My phone buzzed with a text from Cal. How's the Cold War going? She's getting nervous, I typed back. Good. Nervous people make mistakes. He was right. Over the next few days, Kelly's behavior became increasingly erratic. She'd start conversations and then trail off mid-sentence. She'd get dressed up for work and then come home an hour later claiming the client had canceled. She'd ask me random questions about my day, my job, my plans, like she was fishing for information. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning when Liv was at a friend's house and Kelly was supposed to be at a wedding shoot. I was in the garage working on my truck when I heard the front door open. "Tony," Kelly called. "Are you home?" I didn't answer. Through the window, I watched her walk through the house, checking rooms. She looked nervous, almost guilty. My phone was sitting on the workbench, and I watched as a text came in from Eliot. "Coast clear? Your husband's truck is in the driveway." I took a photo of the message, then deleted it from my phone. 20 minutes later, Kelly appeared in the garage doorway. "There you are," she said, slightly out of breath. "I didn't hear you answer." Music was too loud, I lied, gesturing to the silent radio. The wedding got moved to next weekend, so I came home early. She was talking too fast, the words tumbling over each other. Thought maybe we could spend some time together. I looked at her, really looked at her. Her hair was mussed, her lipstick was gone, and there was a mark on her neck that looked suspiciously like a hickey. "That sounds nice," I said. "What did you have in mind?" "Maybe we could talk about us, about Vermont, about our future." Our future. The one she'd been planning with another man. "Sure," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. "Let's talk." We sat on the back porch with glasses of iced tea, looking out at the neighbor's yard where Mrs. Harlow was pretending to garden while obviously eavesdropping. "I've been thinking," Kelly said, "about what you said, about being too emotional." I hadn't said anything about being too emotional. She was thinking of her phone conversation with Eliot. "Oh?" "I think maybe I was being unfair. You're a sensitive man, and that's not necessarily a bad thing." "Isn't it?" She reached over and took my hand. Her fingers were cold despite the warm afternoon. "No, it's one of the things I fell in love with. Your gentleness, your kindness." I looked down at our joined hands and felt nothing. No warmth, no connection, no love, just skin touching skin. "That means a lot," I said. "Does it?" She squeezed my fingers. "Because sometimes I feel like we're drifting apart, like you're pulling away from me." "Am I?" "Tony, please. I'm trying to have a real conversation here." I met her eyes for the first time in weeks. They were the same green I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago, but now they looked desperate, calculating. "What do you want me to say, Kelly?" "I want you to fight for us, for our marriage." Fight for us, while she was sleeping with another man. How would I do that? I don't know. Show some passion, some emotion, prove that you still care. I leaned back in my chair and studied her face. This was a test of some kind. She wanted me to get angry, to accuse her, to give her a reason to justify what she was doing. "I do care," I said quietly. "More than you know." "Then why do you feel so far away?" "Maybe I'm just tired." "Of what?" "Of trying so hard to make you happy when nothing I do seems to work." For a moment, her mask slipped. I saw something ugly flash across her features. Irritation, maybe. Or contempt. "That's not true," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? When's the last time you said thank you for anything I did? When's the last time you showed any interest in my work, my hobbies, my thoughts? When's the last time you touched me without wanting something?" She pulled her hand away. "That's not fair." "Maybe not, but it's honest." We sat in silence for a while, watching Mrs. Harlow pretend to weed the same patch of dirt she'd been working on for 20 minutes. "What do you want from me, Tony?" It was a good question. What did I want? A month ago, I would have said I wanted her to love me again, to choose me, to fight for our marriage the way she was asking me to fight for it. Now, sitting on this porch with this woman who'd been lying to my face for months, I realized what I really wanted was much simpler. I wanted her to pay. I want honesty, I said. You have it. Do I? She looked away. Of course. Then tell me about Eliot. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. What about him? Tell me about your relationship. He's my business partner. You know that. Is he? Tony, what are you implying? I stood up and gathered our glasses. I'm not implying anything. I'm asking a direct question, and you're not giving me a direct answer. There's nothing to tell. Okay. I headed for the kitchen, and she followed me, her voice rising with panic. Tony, wait. You can't just what? Can't just accuse me of something and then walk away. I turned around and looked at her. I didn't accuse you of anything. I asked you about your relationship with Eliot, and you said there was nothing to tell, so there's nothing more to discuss. But you don't believe me. Does it matter what I believe? Of course it matters. You're my husband. Am I? Because lately I feel more like a roommate you occasionally have dinner with. She started crying then. Big, dramatic tears that would have worked on me a month ago. Now they just looked like another performance. I don't know what's happened to you, she sobbed. You've changed. You're cold. You're cruel. I'm honest. This isn't you. She was right. The old Tony would have apologized by now. Would have held her while she cried and promised to work on his trust issues. Would have made this his fault somehow. But the old Tony was gone. He died in a garage at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night while listening to his wife plan a future that didn't include him. Maybe not, I said. Maybe this is who I've always been underneath. I don't like this version of you. I smiled, and something in my expression made her take a step back. That's okay, I said. I don't like the version of you I've been living with either. Kelly started making mistakes. It began with small things, coming home with sand on her shoes when she claimed to have been at indoor meetings, or forgetting which lies she'd told about where she'd been. But as the days passed and my cold politeness continued, her errors became more obvious, like the morning I found Eliot's expensive sunglasses in our kitchen. These yours? I asked, holding them up when Kelly came downstairs. She froze halfway to the coffee pot. Oh, those. I borrowed them yesterday. The sun was really bright during the outdoor shoot. Must have been. These are men's sunglasses. They're unisex. I turned them over and read the label. Ray-Ban aviators, size large. Pretty masculine for unisex. Eliot let me borrow them, okay? Is that a crime? Not at all. I set them on the counter. I'll make sure he gets them back. I can return them myself. I'm sure you can. But I pocketed the sunglasses anyway. Another piece of evidence for my growing collection. That afternoon, while Kelly was at what she claimed was a client consultation, I drove to Eliot's studio. It was in the trendy part of downtown, sandwiched between a yoga studio and an organic juice bar. The kind of place that charged 3 times what it was worth because it looked good on Instagram. The door was locked, but through the window I could see Eliot setting up lighting equipment. He was exactly what you'd expect from Kelly's type. Tall, lean, with perfectly styled hair and the kind of stubble that took effort to maintain. He was wearing skinny jeans and a vintage band t-shirt that probably cost more than my work boots. I knocked on the glass door, and he looked up with an annoyed expression that quickly changed to nervous recognition when he saw me. Tony, he said, opening the door. Hey, man, what's up? Found these at my house. I held up his sunglasses. Kelly said you'd want them back. Oh, yeah, thanks. He took them, but didn't quite meet my eyes. She borrowed them for a shoot yesterday. So she said. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Eliot was trying to look casual, but I could see sweat forming on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "Well," he said finally, "thanks for bringing them by." "No problem." I looked past him into the studio. "Nice setup you have here." "Thanks. It's taken a while to get it how I want it." "I bet. Must be expensive, all this equipment. Photography's an investment-heavy business. Good thing you have Kelly to help with the financial side." His face went pale. "What do you mean?" "Her business expertise, her connections, her investment in your success." "Right. Yeah, she's been really helpful." I nodded slowly, letting my eyes wander around the studio. There was a couch in the corner that looked like it had seen a lot of use, and I noticed Kelly's favorite lipstick on the coffee table next to it. "You know," I said, picking up the lipstick, "Kelly's been so busy with work lately, coming home late, weekend meetings, phone calls at all hours. Really dedicated to the business." Eliot's hands were shaking now. "She's very professional." "Oh, I know. Very thorough, very hands-on." I set the lipstick back down and smiled at him. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Anyway," I said, "I should let you get back to work. I know how important your art is. Thanks for understanding." "Of course. We're all adults here, right?" I left him standing in the doorway, looking like he was going to throw up. That evening, Kelly came home in a strange mood, jumpy and distracted, constantly checking her phone. "How was your day?" I asked over dinner. "Fine. Good. Productive." "What kind of shoot did you do?" "Just some headshots. Nothing exciting." "Where?" "Eliot's studio." I nodded and took another bite of my pasta. "I stopped by there today, actually." Kelly's fork clattered against her plate. "You what?" "Stopped by the studio to return Eliot's sunglasses." "Why would you do that?" "Because they were in our kitchen, and I assumed he'd want them back." "I told you I could return them myself. I was in the neighborhood." She was staring at me with a mixture of panic and anger. "You had no right to go there. To return someone's property? I think that's just being neighborly." "That's not what I mean, and you know it." I looked up from my plate with genuine curiosity. "What do you mean, then?" "I mean..." She struggled for words. "I mean you were checking up on me." "Was I? How would returning sunglasses be checking up on you?" "Because you don't trust me." "Should I?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Kelly's face went through several expressions: anger, fear, calculation, and finally something that looked like resignation. "I don't know how to answer that," she said quietly. "Try honesty." "I have been honest." "Have you?" She pushed her plate away, barely touched. "I can't do this anymore, Tony." "Do what?" "This interrogation, this constant suspicion, this feeling like I'm on trial in my own home. I asked you how your day was. No, you didn't. You set a trap with those sunglasses, then ambushed me with questions." She wasn't wrong. I had set a trap, and she'd walked right into it. "If you have nothing to hide," I said, "then there's nothing to worry about. Everyone has something to hide. Everyone deserves privacy. Even from their spouse. Especially from their spouse sometimes." It was the most honest thing she'd said in months. "Well," I said, standing up and clearing my plate, "I appreciate the honesty." "Tony, wait." But I was already walking away. Behind me, I heard her chair scrape against the floor as she stood up. "We need to talk," she called after me. "About what?" "About us. About what's happening to our marriage." I stopped at the kitchen sink and turned around. She was standing in the doorway, looking smaller somehow. Vulnerable. It was a good act. "What's happening to our marriage, Kelly?" "I don't know. But something is. You're different. Cold. Like you're already gone." "Maybe I am." "Are you?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Gone, I mean." I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse or love. All I saw was fear, not of losing me, but of losing the comfortable life I provided. I don't know, I said. Are you? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. That night I lay in bed listening to Kelly toss and turn beside me. Around 2 a.m. she got up and went to the bathroom. I heard the soft sound of her typing on her phone. When she came back to bed, I pretended to be asleep. But I was thinking about Eliot's terrified face, about Kelly's defensive anger, about the way she'd looked when I asked if she was already gone. They were scared. Good. Scared people made bigger mistakes. The next morning, Kelly announced she was going to visit her sister in Boston for the weekend. Sarah's having problems with her marriage, she said, not meeting my eyes. She needs someone to talk to. Sarah, who'd been happily married for 15 years and lived in Portland, not Boston. That's nice of you, I said. Tell her I said hello. I will. When are you leaving? This afternoon. I'll be back Sunday night. Drive safe. She packed a bag with more care than usual, attractive lingerie, her best dresses, the perfume she only wore for special occasions. All for a weekend of consoling her sister. After she left, I called Cal. Weekend alone? He asked. Kelly's visiting her sister. The one in Portland? Apparently she moved to Boston. Cal laughed. Right. What are you going to do? Research. What kind of research? The kind that might come in handy later. I spent the weekend going through Kelly's things, not looking for evidence of the affair, but learning about her finances, her business dealings, her digital life. What I found was illuminating. Kelly's styling business was barely breaking even. Most of her income came from the joint checking account I'd been funding for years. Her credit cards were maxed out on clothes, spa treatments, and expensive dinners. Her social media presence was carefully curated to look successful, but the numbers didn't lie. She was living beyond her means and had been for months. More interesting was what I found on her laptop. Emails with Eliot going back 8 months, starting professional and gradually becoming more personal. Photos she'd never shown me, messages about weekend getaways and future plans, and a draft email she'd never sent, addressed to a divorce attorney. I screenshot everything and saved it to an encrypted folder. Then I put everything back exactly where I'd found it and spent Sunday working on my truck. Kelly came home Sunday night looking guilty and satisfied. Her hair was different, shorter, more stylish. Her nails were freshly done. She was glowing with the kind of happiness I hadn't seen from her in years. How was Sarah? I asked. Better. We talked through a lot of things. Good. I'm glad you could help. She says hi, by the way. That's nice. Did you go anywhere fun? Just around the city. Nothing special. But her phone was full of photos from a romantic bed and breakfast in the mountains, 2 hours from any city. Photos of couples' massages and champagne dinners and sunrise walks. Photos that included the edge of a man's hand, a masculine shoulder, the corner of a face I recognized. She'd gotten sloppy, overconfident, exactly what Cal had predicted. I'm glad you had a good time, I said. Thanks. She kissed my cheek, a quick, guilty peck that felt like a betrayal all by itself. I'm exhausted. I think I'll go to bed early. Good idea. I watched her go upstairs, her weekend bag slung over her shoulder like evidence she was too arrogant to hide. Tomorrow, I decided, it was time to start phase 2. Monday morning, I made a phone call that would change everything. Mara, it's Tony Ward. Kelly's business partner sounded surprised to hear from me. Oh, hi Tony. Kelly's not here yet. Should I have her call you? Actually, I was hoping to talk to you about the business. A pause. What about it? I'm thinking about making an investment. Kelly's been working so hard, and I want to support what she's doing. Could we meet for coffee? Maybe you could walk me through the financials. Another pause, longer this time. Sure. I guess. When were you thinking? This afternoon? I know Kelly has that big client meeting, so she'll be busy. What client meeting? Perfect. Kelly hadn't coordinated her lies with her business partner. The Henderson wedding follow-up, I said, naming a client from 6 months ago. She mentioned it this morning. Tony, the Hendersons were a one-time thing. We finished that job months ago. Really? Huh. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe you did. We met at a coffee shop downtown, far from Kelly's usual haunts. Mara was a small, sharp woman with intelligent eyes and the kind of no-nonsense attitude that made her the perfect foil for Kelly's vanity. So, she said, after we'd ordered, what's this really about? I told you. I want to invest in the business. Bullshit. She leaned back in her chair and studied me. You want to know what your wife is really doing with her time? I admired her directness. What makes you think that? Because Kelly Monroe Ward hasn't done a day of real work in 6 months. I've been carrying the entire business while she plays Instagram model with that photographer. Eliot. You know about him? I know they're working together. Mara laughed, but there was no humor in it. Working, right. Is that what she calls it? What would you call it? She was quiet for a long moment, stirring her latte and thinking. Finally, she looked up at me with something like pity in her eyes. I'd call it a midlife crisis with expensive taste. Meaning your wife is having an affair, Tony. A very public, very expensive affair that's destroying our business and making me look like an idiot. The words hung between us like a challenge. I could deny it, act shocked, pretend this was news to me. Instead, I nodded. How long have you known? About the affair? Months? About you knowing? Since you called this morning asking about a client meeting that doesn't exist. And you're telling me this because I'm tired of covering for her. Because she's been using our business as a front for her relationship. And because you seem like a decent guy who deserves better. I sipped my coffee and considered my options. Mara could be an ally, but only if I played this right. What do you want? I asked. What do you mean? I mean, what do you want out of this conversation? What's your end game? She smiled for the first time since we'd sat down. I want Kelly out of the business. She's burden, and she's costing me clients with her drama. How? She shows up late, cancels appointments, spends more time taking selfies than working. Last week, she brought Eliot to a client meeting and they spent the entire time flirting while I tried to salvage the presentation. Sounds frustrating. It's more than frustrating. It's professional suicide. I've worked too hard to build this business to watch her destroy it for Instagram likes and mediocre connection with a wannabe artist. I almost choked on my coffee. Mediocre? Please, Eliot Case is all style and no substance. He's a trust fund kid playing photographer until daddy cuts off his allowance. The only reason he's interested in Kelly is because she makes him feel like a real artist. And Kelly? Kelly's interested because he makes her feel young and desirable. It's not love, Tony. It's mutual ego stroking. But it's still an affair. Yes, it's still an affair. We sat in silence for a while, watching other people's normal lives unfold around us. Finally, Mara spoke again. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Want some advice? Sure. Don't fight for her. She's not worth fighting for. That's harsh. It's honest. Kelly's a beautiful woman, but she's selfish and shallow and cruel. She's been making jokes about you for months, calling you boring, saying you're too needy, laughing about how you still believe her lies. Each word hit like a physical blow. I'd suspected Kelly didn't respect me, but hearing it confirmed was different. Worse. She said all that to you? To me, to clients, to anyone who would listen. She thinks it makes her seem sophisticated, the bored housewife trapped with her dull husband. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because it wasn't my place, and because I hoped she'd get tired of the drama and go back to being professional. But she didn't. She got worse, more reckless, more cruel. I finished my coffee and stood up. Thank you for being honest. Tony? She touched my arm as I turned to leave. Whatever you're planning, be smart about it. Kelly's vindictive when she's cornered. I'll keep that in mind. That evening, I was waiting in the living room when Kelly came home. She looked surprised to see me there. Usually, I was in my office or the garage by the time she got back from her meetings. "Hey," she said, dropping her purse by the door. "You're home early." "Actually, I've been home for hours. You're the one who's late. The client meeting ran long." "Which client?" She froze, her hand halfway to her hair. "What? Which client kept you late?" The Hendersons. We're doing some follow-up work." "Really? Because I had coffee with Mara today, and she said the Henderson job was finished months ago." The color drained from Kelly's face. "You talked to Mara?" "I did. Interesting conversation." "What did she tell you?" "The truth." Kelly sank into the chair across from me, her carefully constructed facade finally cracking. "Tony, I can explain." "Can you?" "Because I'd love to hear the explanation for 8 months of lies." 8 months? That's when the emails started, when you and Eliot moved from professional to personal. "You read my emails?" "I read everything, Kelly. The texts, the photos, the draft email to the divorce attorney, all of it." She started crying then, but these weren't the manipulative tears from before. These were ugly, desperate tears, the kind that came from being truly caught. "I never meant for it to happen," she sobbed. "But it did happen." "Yes." "For 8 months." "Yes." "While you were telling me I was too emotional. While you were making me feel crazy for being suspicious. While you were planning to divorce me." "I wasn't going to—" "The email, Kelly. I read the email." She flinched at the profanity. I never swore at her, never raised my voice, but something had broken loose inside me, and I couldn't hold it back anymore. "You want to know what hurts the most?" I continued. "It's not the affair. It's not even the lies. It's the way you made me feel like I was the problem. Like my feelings didn't matter. Like wanting to be loved by my wife made me weak." "You're not weak." "No, I'm not. But you are." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean you're weak, Kelly. You're selfish and shallow and weak. You couldn't even have an affair with dignity. You had to make me feel like shit while you were doing it." "Tony, please." "I'm not finished." I stood up and began pacing, 18 years of suppressed anger finally finding its voice. "You want to mess around? Fine. You want to leave me? Fine. But don't you dare try to make me the villain in your story. Don't you dare pretend this is my fault." "I know it's not your fault." "Do you? Because for months you've been telling anyone who would listen that I'm boring, needy, too emotional. You've been making jokes about our marriage while you were destroying it." "Who told you that? Does it matter? The point is, you've been humiliating me publicly while lying to me privately. That's not just betrayal, Kelly. That's cruelty." She was sobbing now, her perfect makeup running down her cheeks in black streams. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." "No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference." "That's not true." "Isn't it? Because if I hadn't found out, you'd be planning another weekend getaway with Eliot right now. You'd be lying about client meetings and laughing about your stupid husband who pays for everything while you play house with another man." "I love you." The words hit me like a slap. "No, you don't." "I do. I know I've made mistakes, but I do love you. You love the life I give you. The house, the car, the financial security. But you don't love me, Kelly. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been able to do this." She tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. "Tony, please. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can what? Pretend this didn't happen? Go back to the way things were? We can try." I looked at her, really looked at her. Even crying, even caught, even desperate, she was still beautiful. Still the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. But that woman was gone, if she'd ever existed at all. The way things were, I said quietly, was you lying to me every day while sleeping with another man. Why would I want to go back to that? Because I'll change. I'll end it with Eliot. I'll be better. Until the next time. There won't be a next time. There's always a next time with people like you, Kelly. People who think they deserve whatever they want, whenever they want it, regardless of who gets hurt. I headed for the stairs, but she called after me. Where are you going? To pack. Pack? Tony, you can't just leave. We have a daughter. We have a life together. I stopped and turned around. We have a daughter who treats me like an embarrassment because that's how you've taught her to see me. And we had a life together until you decided to build a new one with someone else. So that's it? 18 years of marriage, and you're just going to walk away? You walked away first, Kelly. I'm just making it official. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Every day for 8 months you made the same choice. To lie to me, to cheat on me, to humiliate me. Those weren't mistakes. They were decisions. I started up the stairs again, but her voice stopped me one more time. I'll tell everyone you abandoned us. I'll make sure the whole town knows what kind of man you really are. I turned around and smiled at her. It was the same cold smile I'd given Eliot at his studio. Go ahead, I said. Tell them. Tell them how your husband found out about your affair and decided he deserved better. Tell them how you've been lying and cheating for months while he worked to support you. Tell them whatever you want, Kelly. The truth has a way of coming out. You bastard. Maybe, but I'm an honest bastard. That's more than you can say. I went upstairs and packed a bag, listening to Kelly cry in the living room. When I came back down, she was on the phone, probably with Eliot, probably planning her next move. I walked out the front door without saying goodbye. As I threw my bag in the truck, I saw Mrs. Harlow watching from her window. I waved at her, and she quickly disappeared behind her curtains. Let her watch. Let them all watch. I was done hiding, done pretending, done being the fool in Kelly's story. It was time to write my own ending.